Grenlande, ko angliski izrunā kā Greenland, zaļā zeme, nepavisam nav zaļa, jo 85% teritorijas klāj ledus. To par zaļo zemi 10. gadsimta beigās nodēvēja vikings Ēriks Rudais, kurš tur ieradās izciest sodu, cerībā, ka uz zaļo zemi izdosies aizvilināt arī citus. Tā ir lielākā sala pasaulē, taču vismazāk apdzīvotā vieta uz zemes. Šobrīd tur dzīvo gandrīz 57,000 iedzīvotāju, no kuriem 16,000 apmetušies galvaspilsētā Nukā. 88% no tiem ir Grenlandes pamatiedzīvotāji inuīti. Ārpus apdzīvotajām vietām nav ne ceļu, ne mobilā telefona pārklājuma. Galvenais pārvietošanās veids ir ūdens un gaisa transports, sniega motocikli un pat suņu pajūgi. Gadsimtu gaitā Grenlande pārmaiņas piederējusi te Dānijai, te Norvēģijai. 1933. gadā starptautiskajai tiesai Hāgā pasludinot, ka Dānijai ir pilnīgas tiesības uz Grenlandi. 1943. gadā ASV tur iekārtoja gaisa spēku bāzi, bet pēc kara beigām piedāvāja salu no Dānijas atpirkt par $100 miljoniem, taču piedāvājums tika noraidīts. 1953. gadā Grenlande tika konstitucionāli deklarēta kā daļa no Dānijas ar pašnoteikšanās tiesībām un saviem deputātiem Dānijas parlamentā. Kopš 2009. gada Grenlande pilnībā kontrolē savu dabas resursu ieguvi un daļēji ārlietas. Ar jaunu spāru atsākušās diskusijas par pilnīgu atdalīšanos no Dānijas, aptaujās 84% atbalstot neatkarību. Tomēr pilnīga neatkarība no Dānijas radītu ļoti nopietnus ekonomiskos un drošības izaicinājumus, jo sala ir atkarīga no Dānijas subsīdijām, kas ir ap €500 miljoniem gadā. Tur atrodami bagātīgi derīgo izrakteņu krājumi, kā arī nafta un gāze. Klimata pārmaiņas varētu atvērt jaunus kuģošanas ceļus Arktikā, kas vēl vairāk palielinās Grenlandes stratēģisko nozīmi nākotnē. Jau 2019. gadā Donalds Trumps pauda interesi par Grenlandes iegādi, taču Dānija to noraidīja. Pagājuši 6 gadi, un Trumps atkal par to sāk runāt, pat piedraudot ar spēka pielietošanu. Lai labāk izprastu Grenlandes situāciju, Kembridžas Universitātes ģeopolitikas centrā tika sarīkota ekspertu diskusija.
So I think over the past few weeks we've had quite a lot of these sorts of statements in terms of American foreign policy from the new president that are almost unthinkable. They previously were unthinkable, and that's why you do wonder whether having to see them as part of seeing them together is part of the answer here. So how much is this really about Greenland and how much is it about trying to reconfigure the world? Obviously we don't know what's going to happen, but if Ukraine and also I suppose potentially Israel, Gaza is settled in a certain way that's been proposed, that makes it very that's quite unprecedented for post-1945 geopolitics, I think.
Spēka pielietošana no ASV puses būtu milzīga problēma NATO.
If one of the main allies were to really take by force the land of another ally, and it would really raise big questions because Article 5 could not be applied because it would be from within. In fact, it's the end of the NATO alliance and thereby also one of the signals that it would be definitely the end of the world order as we have known it since 1945 and also since the Helsinki Final Act and since the end of the Cold War. In fact, since that period, 45 to 2022, when Russia started the war of aggression on Ukraine. Rather than maybe expanding those capabilities that are there in conjunction with Denmark, Trump actually challenged Denmark's position vis-à-vis Greenland, and therefore an ally, a smaller ally inside NATO. At the same time, when Trump is challenging the allies also over supporting Ukraine against Russia.
Trying to
Izskanēja bažas par Trumpa neprognozējamo ārpolitiku, taču skaidrs, ka ASV interese par Grenlandi sniedzas tālāk par Trumpa prezidentūru un ir ilgtermiņa stratēģiskā prioritāte. Grenlandai savas armijas nav, tādēļ sadarbība ar NATO ir būtiska tās drošības stratēģijas daļa, un eksperti pieļauj iespēju, ka Grenlanda nākotnē varētu izveidot krasta apsardzi, nevis tradicionālo armiju. Grenlandiešu un dāņu attiecības ir visai sarežģītas, jo paši grenlandieši dāņus uzskata par kolonizatoriem. Sāra Olsviga, Inuitu polārās padomas starptautiskā vadītāja un bijusi parlamentāriete, uzsver, ka nav tāda jēdziena kā labāks kolonizators.
Looking back at the consequences of colonization, not just up until 1953, which is the formal end of colonialism or the colonial era, but also what happened after 53, where much more massive colonial policies created a systemic discrimination of Inuit and Greenlanders in Greenland and in Denmark, and what those policies and that systemic discrimination has of legacies within the current systems, both here in Kalaallit and in Denmark. There's a specific one related to the IUD program, which I'm sure you've heard of, which is a very, very, very serious matter, where a program decided basically by the government in Denmark resulted in half of the women and girls in a childbearing age being fitted with IUDs.
Bieži vien tas notika bez pašu sieviešu vai nepilngadīgo meiteņu vecāku piekrišanas, tādēļ Inuitu sieviešu grupa ir uzsākusi tiesvedību pret Dāniju.
It very clearly is an example of a deliberate policy from Denmark after the formal colonial era.
This hasn't changed.
To, ka dāņi joprojām tiek uzskatīti par kolonizatoriem, apstiprina arī diskusijas klausītājs, students no Norvēģijas, kurš pats neilgu laiku strādājis Grenlandē.
Greenlanders, so we are often used to talk about the Greenlanders as like an Inuit people, which is the case, right? But most Greenlanders are a mix kind of like between the native Greenlandic population, Danish, Norwegian, Faroese, Icelandic people who have migrated to Greenland as well. And I think that the average perception in Greenland is, generally speaking, negative towards the Danes, but it's more complicated than saying that there is a sort of like maliciousness to it. I think most Greenlanders acknowledge the fact that they're a Nordic country and they have ties to both Denmark and all the other Scandinavian countries, and those are familiar ties, cultural ties, economic ties. But on the whole, I would say that it's kind of a skepticism towards Denmark because of what they consider perceived injustices. The Greenlandic culture it's a kinship culture, it's a familial culture. They value family and they value the close-knit connections that they have in their small local societies. Keep in mind that the Greenlandic villages, they're not connected by road or anything, right? So you have to travel by airplane or boat if you want to go from one village to another. And I think that results in a really close-knit society where everyone looks out for each other and everyone has an interest in how people are doing, basically. And even for me as a non-Greenlander, as a Norwegian traveling to Greenland, I also experience this kind of warmth in the Greenlandic culture, which I really appreciate.
YouGov šī gada janvāra aptaujā noskaidrots, ka 78% dāņu neatbalstītu Grenlandes pārdošanu ASV, bet 72% uzskata, ka lēmumu jāpieņem pašiem grenlandiešiem. Tomēr, ja Trumps tiešām pilnā nopietnībā gribētu nopirkt Grenlandi, tad pagaidām nav skaidrs, kurš tad būtu pārdevējs – Dānija vai Grenlande.